many Nigerians woke up to reports that the Senate had rejected electronic transmission of election results. That report spread fast and caused anger and confusion. Now, opposition senators are saying something different. They insist that the Senate actually approved electronic transmission and that Nigerians were misled. So which version is correct? Did the Senate weaken the law, or did it keep the system used in 2022? This is a calm, fact-based analysis of what was really agreed inside the Senate. And the key question is, what exactly did lawmakers approve, and what does it mean for the 2027 elections? Opposition senators in the National Assembly held a press briefing in Abuja to address reports about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026. The briefing was led by Ayanaya Abaribe and members of the Minority Caucus. They stated that lawmakers agreed during retreats and closed-door sessions to allow electronic transmission of election results. They said this position was maintained during the legislative process. During plenary consideration of the bill, the Senate rejected a proposed amendment to Clause 63. The amendment would have made electronic transmission of results from polling units to the Independent National Electoral Commission portal mandatory. Instead, the Senate adopted the existing provision in the Electoral Act, 2022. That provision states that results shall be transferred in a manner prescribed by INSC. The rejection followed a motion by Senator Tahir Monguno proposing that the transmission clause be removed while retaining the original wording. This led to reports that electronic transmission had been rejected. After the reports went viral, Senate President Godswill Akpabio said the reports were misleading. He stated that the Senate retained electronic transmission as used in the 2022 elections. Abaribe and other senators said that electronic transmission was approved in both committee reports and closed sessions. They said the Senate passed the bill without disagreement. The senators also confirmed that a harmonization committee has been set up to reconcile the Senate and House versions of the bill. They said the final document will be forwarded to the president after harmonization. Some opposition parties and public figures, including Atiku Abubakar, criticized the Senate over the reports. Civil society groups, including Kimpact Development Initiative, also raised concerns. The executive director of KDI, Samson Itodo, said unclear legal provisions could affect transparency ahead of the 2027 elections. Discussions on amending the Electoral Act began in 2025 as part of preparations for the 2027 general elections. Joint committees of the Senate and House of Representatives worked on the proposed amendments. During this period, lawmakers held retreats and closed-door sessions to review key provisions. According to opposition senators, electronic transmission of results was agreed upon at these meetings. In early February 2026, the Senate considered the bill at plenary. During this session, a proposal to make electronic transmission compulsory was rejected. The Senate instead retained the wording from the 2022 Electoral Act. This decision led to reports that lawmakers had removed electronic transmission. After the reports spread online and in the media, public criticism followed. Opposition parties and civil society groups reacted to the reports. In response, the Minority Caucus organized a press briefing in Abuja. They said the reports were misleading and clarified the Senate's position. Shortly after, the Senate leadership also issued statements defending the decision. This sequence explains why the issue has now become a major public debate. The core issue here is the difference between mandatory transmission and discretionary transmission under the law. This difference determines how much control INEC has over the process. The rejected amendment would have required INAC officials to transmit results electronically in real time. This would have removed most discretion from election officers. By retaining the 2022 provision, the Senate left the method of transmission to INEC's guidelines. This means electronic transmission is allowed but not strictly enforced in every situation. Supporters of the amendment argue that mandatory transmission improves transparency. They believe it reduces manual interference and delays. Supporters of the existing provision argue that flexibility is needed. They say technical challenges, network failures, and logistics must be considered. So the issue is not whether electronic transmission exists. It is about how strongly the law compels its use and how much discretion is left to the electoral body. This is a policy and institutional debate, not just a political disagreement. The Independent National Electoral Commission is directly affected. The final wording of the law determines how INSC designs and operates its result transmission system. Political parties and candidates are also affected. The rules on transmission influence how election results are verified and contested. Voters are impacted as well. Clear and predictable transmission rules affect public confidence in election outcomes. Election observers and civil society groups are affected. Their ability to monitor and assess transparency depends on how results are transmitted. The National Assembly is affected in terms of public trust. Confusion over the bill has created questions about legislative clarity and accountability. This issue goes beyond one amendment. It affects how future elections are managed and perceived across the country. The Senate has not released the full final harmonized version of the bill to the public. As a result, Nigerians cannot yet review the exact wording that will be sent for presidential assent. There has been no detailed explanation of why the proposed amendment was rejected at plenary. Individual lawmakers have not publicly stated their specific reasons for voting against it. The Senate leadership has not clarified how disputes between the Senate and House versions will be resolved if they differ on transmission rules. The possible compromises being considered have not been disclosed. There is also no clear timeline for when the harmonization process will be completed. The date for transmission of the final bill to the President has not been announced. These gaps are not accusations. They reflect the limits of what has been officially communicated so far. For ordinary Nigerians, this issue affects how much trust they place in election results. When rules are unclear, people become unsure about how votes are counted and reported. The debate also affects voter participation. If citizens believe results are transparent, they are more likely to engage in elections. For young voters and first-time voters, electronic transmission represents modernization and accountability. Uncertainty around it can reduce confidence in the system. It also affects political stability. Disputed results often lead to legal challenges and public tension. In simple terms, how results are transmitted influences whether Nigerians accept election outcomes as credible. Watch for the release of the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. This document will show the exact wording approved by both chambers. Pay attention to whether the President signs the bill or raises objections. Presidential assent will determine when the provisions take effect. Observe if INSC issues new guidelines on result transmission. These will clarify how electronic systems will be used in future elections. Also watch for further reactions from political parties and civil society groups. Their responses will indicate whether concerns have been resolved or remain. The disagreement over electronic transmission has created confusion about what the Senate actually approved. At this stage, the issue is about legal wording, institutional discretion, and public trust. The core question remains: will the final law provide clear and enforceable rules for transmitting election results ahead of 2027?